Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Cinephile. This week, we're talking about 2014's Guardians of the Galaxy. This is one of our two Guardians movies before the third one drops later this month. And so, Jake, I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy?
So I really like this movie and Volume 2, its sequel. I'm not a big MCU fan. I say this sharing a screen with possibly the biggest MCU fan, at least that I know and possibly that exists. Um,
Definitely not that exists, but yes, probably the most of anybody you know.
yeah, the Guardians movies. I don't know why they really they really entertain me more. They interest me more than the other MCU movies. These are probably both up there with my favorites of the MCU that I've seen. I actually saw this movie, Volume One, when I was in high school with my church's youth group, and I just remember awkwardly sitting there, like, because there's a fair amount of like innuendo and like slightly
Oh, for sure.
inappropriate humor. And I'm sitting here like, am I allowed to laugh at this? Am I not supposed to laugh at this? Are we gonna have a conversation after the movie about why I laughed at this? And then my youth pastor and his wife are just like cackling at everything, and I'm like, oh, okay. This
Yeah.
is just genuinely funny, and these are genuinely funny movies. That's one of the things I really enjoy about them. But yeah, I'm excited we're talking about it, and I'm looking forward to the third one coming out.
Yeah, when I first saw this, I don't think I saw this in theaters.
Oh
I
my
could be wrong
gosh,
about
I
that.
saw a
So
movie in theaters that you didn't.
I actually no, I think I might have seen it in theaters. The first memory I have
Right.
of the first memory I have of Guardians is I was in a car driving. I wasn't driving because I wasn't old enough to drive at that point, but I was driving down Binford, and we stopped at a Target. I probably stopped at the Glendale Target, and I bought the Guardians of the Galaxy Awesome Mix Volume One on CD
Because
because
it's
this was
that
also
good.
2014. Because it's that good. Yeah, it's really that good. And I remember that. And then these are movies that I guess I wouldn't say I rewatch a ton um of all the different MCU films. I probably watch them maybe not the least. Probably the Thor movies I watch the least, except for Thor Ragnarok. That one slaps. But the other Thor movies, I don't think I watch as much. Um, but I am a big fan of the director, James Gunn.
Mhm.
And some of the stuff he does, I think he's really funny. And he's definitely an auteur, which is a little bit of, it's a little interesting for the MCU because the MCU really focuses on like almost like corporate auteurism and
Mhm.
really having Kevin Feige and Louis Desposito and that kind of team really focus on the story first. But this is written by James Gunn. It is a very James Gunn film through and through, and I think that makes it really compelling to watch and rewatch, like we did this week.
Yeah. Um, I I don't know how many times I've rewatched this. I either of them, like you said, it's interesting that you point out that you don't rewatch these. I don't know if like I can count on a few times that I've actually been like, oh, I want to watch these, but it's one of those that like when I'm home and like I'm flipping channels on my parents' cable because of course I don't have cable because who under the age of 30 still has cable? No, no one I know at least, and that
Nobody.
I'm not trying to make some like boomer joke or anything. It's just people of our generation don't have cable. We mooch off
Right.
our
And Adam
parents.
never had cable. Adam Horke, he never had cable. So every SpongeBob joke I ever make, he doesn't understand. That one's for you,
Um,
Adam. Get
but
cable.
but the Guardians movies are two movies that like if I'm flipping channels and I see these on cable, like I'm stopping to watch it because
Yeah.
like they're just fun. They're fun movies.
I think so. Aside from the awesome mix being really well known, this movie and this franchise is really well known for really stepping into that more cosmic side of the MCU.
Hmm.
Um, We obviously in Thor Ragnarok kind of got that side. Thor Love and Thunder kind of got that side a little bit, but and even in the original Thor, I mean Asgard, but specifically talking about like a space faring adventure,
Yeah.
this is like the first one. And it kind of introduced and it kind of set the tone for what cosmic MCU kind of looked like.
Yeah.
And I know I looked up because this movie obviously it's got performances like Chris Pratt in it, who you can definitely see as Star Lord, or Dave Bautista as Drax, who I can't imagine anybody else as Drax. And so I went up, and obviously, it's famous that MCU actors, they're not always. There's definitely a pool that they pull from,
Mm.
and so there are, and I haven't shared this with Jake, but there are 11 different actors that were almost cast in this franchise. So I wanted to go through them and see what your thoughts are, Jake.
Okay.
So number one is Jason Momoa as Drax.
I would really enjoyed that, to be honest. I feel like
Yeah,
that would have he wouldn't have been able to do Aquaman then, obviously, because
right.
like Marvel and DC, like they don't share well at all. Um, and I do
They
enjoy
share
him.
James Gunn because DC
Well,
is headed by James Gunn now. But other than that, yeah,
other
you're
than
right.
that, they don't really tend to share. And so, but no, I think that's interesting. Uh, that
He would have been good. He's probably going
Drac.
to be Lobo, and Lobo's kind of like Deadpool,
Okay.
and Deadpool's obviously a very humorous character. So I could see it working for sure. But
It would have worked. It would have been different.
yeah, it definitely would have. I think it would have been more exaggerated. Like
Hmm.
especially in this first one, Drax is very subtle. Like
Yeah.
it's obvious that he doesn't understand sarcasm, but he's also like his performance is not like over the top in
Yeah.
in this one. Another one is Amanda Seyfried as Gamora,
Oh.
which I like Amanda Seyfried. I think she's a great
Oh,
actress.
I think she's wonderful. I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around that
This one
because
is interesting. Oh, go ahead.
it's just I'm trying to imagine Cosette from Les Mis playing Gamora.
Well, and Zoe Saldana does such a great job. She's
Yeah.
really good. She's just a great actress, but
Mhm.
no, she's really good. Glenn Howerton as Star Lord from It's Always Sunny. I don't know if you know who that is.
I don't honestly.
Um, he's one of the leads in It's Always Sunny, and low key, he probably would have been hilarious as Star Lord, actually. Um, David Bowie as a member of Yondu's crew.
I would have loved that. Honestly.
Oh
Like
yeah,
honestly, David Bowie, like this feels like David Bowie could have done the soundtrack to this. Like, don't get me wrong, the soundtrack is phenomenal, but like David Bowie, like I'm surprised there isn't a David Bowie song on the soundtrack because there's just something.
there is in the second one,
There is.
Moon Age Daydream.
Yes, yes, thank you. Um, but yeah, like there's just something like very Ziggy Stardust about this movie.
Um, Olivia Wilde as Gamora. Don't think that would have worked.
Huh.
John Krasinski as Star Lord.
That would have been good.
That would have been really good. I could see that. I could see that. He also auditioned for Captain America,
Huh.
which that would have been an interesting choice for Captain America. And then the last one is Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Star Lord.
Hmm.
I don't
See,
know if he's comedic enough.
yeah, I don't know if I
Yeah.
like that enough.
So those are just a couple of the actors that were considered for Guardians. Actually, let's see. They've got plenty of them.
Yeah.
John Krasinski, Joel Edgerton is another one who plays Uncle Owen in um, Zachary Levi as interesting as Star Lord. He plays Shazam. Um, and yeah, the Glenn Howerton one is good. Then for Gamora, Gina Carano, who plays uh Cara Dune.
Okay.
That would have been really interesting. Adrian
Yeah.
Pilecki, I could see that. Wild. Rosario Dawson, I think she would have been really good.
Yeah.
She's a great actress.
And like seeing her take on Ahsoka.
Yeah,
Like
and
there's
Elizabeth
similar.
Banks.
Oh. Hmm.
That would have been a real interesting
That would
take.
have been a very different
That would
Gamora
have been a
than
very
Zoe
different movie.
Saldana's.
So as much fun as that whole segment was, which um I thought it was going to be more fun when I came up with it than it really ended up being. Um, this cast is stacked. And Jake,
Yeah.
I know you have some of the names written down. Do you want to go through them?
Yeah,
We
I
already
mean,
talked about some of them, but
like you mentioned, Chris Pratt as Peter Quill, aka Star Lord, which no one seems to remember, which is a phenomenal running joke.
who?
Um,
Star Lord,
yeah.
and legendary outlaw. Never heard of him.
Vin Diesel voices Groot, which I was reading up a little bit about this, and Vin Diesel has said that like doing this movie really kind of pulled him out of a dark place because he was in a severe bout of depression after Paul Walker died, his Fast and Furious
Co-star.
co-star.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to play such a nurturing and protective character like Groot, I think he's quoted as saying a character so full of light. Um, as Groot, he attributed that to really kind of helping him get through that time. So I think that's very interesting because uh, you don't think of a, a character with 3 lines as being that significant, but Groot really Groot is. I forgot until this rewatch like how much of a part of the Guardians Groot played.
Right. And
Like,
it's something that you don't really think of because he doesn't really speak
yeah,
and he's kind of just big muscle. But yeah,
he
I think
doesn't. He
sometimes we
doesn't.
forget.
Yeah, he doesn't speak except for obviously I am Groot. Uh, but there's Vin Diesel is able to add some like such inflection and such emotion in each of those lines to make them different and to make you understand. You almost understand what Groot's saying without Rocket like semi translating.
Right.
You know what I mean? Um,
Fuck it.
yeah. And speaking of Rocket, played by Bradley Cooper, who I really enjoy Rocket in this movie. I think he's a very different character. You know what
You
I
mean
mean?
for Bradley Cooper or just in general?
Just in general, like
Yeah.
Rocket is. I don't know. Like, there's nothing I can compare him to. Honestly, like it's just
Yeah, he's pretty unique. And
yeah.
you even see that in he's not one of the ones that are blipped. So he sticks around for the beginning of Endgame
Mhm.
and him kind of being one of the leaders on the team. Um, the pseudo Avengers that are kind of hanging out after the blip. He really is
Hanging
a
out.
unique. I don't. He's a unique animal,
He is.
and in this thing, and I think you see that. Obviously, really he's like a mixture of Tech and Wrecker from Bad Batch,
Yeah.
but a little bit more humorous.
Yeah.
Like he's got that gruffness of kind of like a Wrecker,
Humorous without
but
intending to be humorous, but also realizing his own humor at the same time.
yeah, yeah. When he goes during the movie, he goes, "I need that guy's leg," and then they got it. He goes, "No, how freaking hilarious was it though? He just got his leg." He goes, "I
He's hopping
transferred
around.
30,000 units." It's like, sorry, it was really funny. Like, and then the other he goes, "And we're gonna need that guy's
His
eye."
eye. No, we
um,
don't.
no, we don't. At one
Uh,
point, he asked Bucky how much for the arm.
yeah.
Bucky is in Winter Soldier. It's like,
Yeah.
how much for the arm? Because it's not for sale. I think he said something like anything's for sale at the right price or something. How much
uh,
for the arm? Yeah, so that is kind of surprising. A lot of people I don't think know that Vin Diesel voiced Groot and that Bradley Cooper voiced Rocket,
mhm.
which Sean Gunn, who's the brother of James Gunn, is in this, and he did the He didn't do the motion capture, but he was on set as Rocket.
He was like the
So he would
fill-in.
like crouch down and in a fully green, like a green suit,
Hmm.
and he would just like a morph suit, and he would crouch down, and that's like when Drax sits down with Rocket and is like petting Rocket. Um, he's actually petting Sean Gunn's head, which is kind of hilarious. But you may know Sean Gunn from Gilmore Girls,
Okay.
or as my family calls it, Gilmore. You watching some Gilmore? They are obsessed. I don't know why I looked up. I mean, obviously I'm in the basement and they sleep upstairs, but like the upstairs people are obsessed with with Gilmore Girls. Um, so he's in it too. Uh, Peter Serafinowicz, who played the voice of Darth Maul in episode 1, is in it, and does pretty much nothing. There are like a lot of cameos in this, I think.
Yeah. Um, who else haven't mentioned? Talked about
Don't they
Zoe
call Stanley a pervert?
maybe.
Don't they go like, oh, well, all pervert?
Well,
Because
yeah,
he's like
because
flirting.
well, but like and then like it's the scene where Rocket and Groot are trying to find a bounty. Um, they're
Yeah,
on oh, what's the
Xandar.
planet? Xandar, thank you. They're on Xandar and he's looking around and like he pulls up Stanley's file. He's like, ah, and Stanley's just like got like two like alien girls like on his arm, whatever.
What a clown.
Yeah.
What an OG.
Um, who else didn't we mention? Oh, Lee Pace, second Lee Pace movie in 3 weeks.
Yeah,
Because
that's kind of wild.
yeah, he plays Ronan. And then Michael Rooker as Yondu. Who Yondu? I like Yondu in this, but I
I
really
like him a
like
lot
him.
more in the second.
I love him in the second. Um, and then
I'm
also
Mary Poppins, y'all.
yes, and then you've also got Josh Brolin as Thanos. Which
Yeah.
is
Oh,
this?
and John C. Riley as that
Yeah,
one guy
yeah, yeah,
that says, and I'm doing a direct quote here. He doesn't want to come off as a dick. Because Glenn Close is in this too. We forgot Glenn
yeah.
Close. Yeah.
You said, like you
And
said, there
her,
were a lot of cameos in this, and yeah.
yeah, I would have liked to see a little bit more out of Glenn Close just because she's a fantastic actress.
Hmm.
And it's like obviously in Winter Soldier, which came out in 2015, no, 2013. They're 20, probably 2013. Um, Robert Redford was in that.
Hmm.
Have you seen that one?
Hmm.
Oh, you'd like it. It's really
No.
good. It's some people's favorite. It's like a spy espionage thriller,
Hmm.
and it's got Robert Redford in it. Um, oh, and Benicio del Toro as the collector.
Yeah.
So I mean, so it's there's definitely a cast of kooky characters. Actually I left out one of the could be played by
Hmm.
people. Yandu, they offered the role to OJ,
Shut up. God.
and he said he would never go back to LA, so he couldn't shoot Yandu.
Oh dear.
Um, yeah, and arrows are not his weapon of choice. Anyway, this budget, this movie had a budget of $170 million, which
Yeah.
is a lot of money, especially it's very visual effects heavy,
Hmm.
obviously, and it made 772 million worldwide, um, with a $94 million opening. So it didn't even hit 100 million opening weekend, which now you're thinking MCU, you're like, if they don't hit 100 million, what's wrong with them?
Yeah.
But this was now everybody knows about Guardians of the Galaxy, but at the time nobody knew
Right.
what the Guardians were.
Yeah. I that was my first thought when you said those numbers, how it didn't hit 100 million, because really all the MCU properties that had been kind of fleshed out, this probably better than I, but at least come to my mind, we've had prior to this, we had seen Spider-Man stuff, Iron Man, with really Iron Man kind of begins the MCU, correct?
Hmm.
Um, and then Captain America and Thor, and those kind of movies, like it, those characters already had like significant followings, right? Like you
Right.
had people that knew them from, the original comic books and other stuff, that these were well-known characters. Like I knew who Thor was, I knew who
Well,
the
yeah, but
Incredible Hulk
he's
was.
also
I
from
know,
Norse mythology.
yeah, but I know who Iron Man was, right? Like when it came out, like I had a concept of like, oh yeah, is it from the comic? I had never heard of Guardians of the Galaxy, and I think you pointed
Yeah.
out that a lot of people hadn't. And so this, I think, was kind of their first, you could say, foray into lesser known MCU properties.
I
Uh,
think I like you could even look at it as this was canary in the coal mine, if you will, of lesser characters that they want to explore. What is the financial viability of that?
mhm.
Because at this point, you're right. Even though Iron Man at that time was not top tier Marvel,
Yeah.
that was really Fantastic Four, X-Men, things like that. And they chose Iron Man, and he kind of skyrocketed to very, very popular after the first Iron Man movie. But to look at something that nobody had ever heard of
Hmm.
and to see what is the financial viability of just kind of throwing it in there. And there isn't much connection, if you will, to the broader MCU other than Thanos.
Yeah.
Um,
Which is this the first
there's
time we meet Thanos?
this is the first time we hear Thanos speak.
Okay.
The end of Avengers, the post credit scene is Thanos kind of turning around and smiling. It doesn't look at all like the evolution of Thanos
Yeah.
from like a very alien kind of monster into purple grimace. Um, kind of it's slow, but it
Yeah.
so he doesn't look the same from 2012 to 2014, and then obviously from 2014 onward he looks a little different. So it's like an evolution of the animation and the CG. But yeah, that's the only connection that I can think of that Guardians has
Yeah.
to the broader MCU. Um, it also has post credit scenes, but it's one of those things where, especially in Guardians 2, they've got like 6 post credit scenes.
Yeah.
So it just kind of, I don't want to say like took everything and just amped it up, but it really embraced some of the things that made the MCU great at that
Mhm.
current moment. And I don't know, it was just like a good time. I mean,
Yeah.
it really was a good time. I think we were talking yesterday about how you really like Chris Pratt in this.
Yeah. I feel like
Mhm.
he's not like he's your atypical superhero, right? He almost has like he's along the lines um of a Tony Stark or of a Batman type character, where he doesn't have like supernatural ability. He's a normal dude, if you will. Like he almost seems like, because he's a kid abducted from Earth in this Guardians universe, it almost seems like he's kind of an underdog, right?
Right.
Like humans really don't seem to have advantageous like abilities. Like yeah, you see humans on Nova, uh
Xandar.
Xandar. God, why do I want to call it Nova Prime? That's Glenn
That's because
Close.
Nova Prime is Glenn Close.
Yeah, but like Nova Prime sounds like a planet, does it not?
Yeah. No, yeah, like that. I'd live
That
on Nova
sounds
Prime.
more. That sounds more like sounds more like a planet than Xandar.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Xandar sounds like a guy that lives on Nova Prime. Hey, you want to go over to Xandar's house? It's like, oh yeah, that guy on Nova Prime. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I know. Not you want to go over to Nova Prime's house? It's like, where's that? Xandar. It's like, who's Xandar? No, it's a planet. What?
right.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and
But he very much has that like self-made quality to him, and I think that's appealing. And also, he's just, the humor comes first with that character, I feel like, and
mm,
he's funny before he's serious. Whereas I feel like um your typical superhero archetype is serious before they're funny. The humor almost comes because they are so serious in some cases. It's kind of, I can think of a few moments from Thor. The humor arises from him walking around acting like he's God, and everyone's like,
Another.
"Who is this guy?"
Another. That's yeah.
But
That no, and that's and I won't because you told me what your roses are, so I'm not gonna make you say everything now. But yeah, I think the one thing that I kind of noticed about Chris Pratt, but just in general, is the tone of this movie is really interesting because obviously it is a comedy.
oh,
But
it is a comedy first and an action superhero movie second.
I really like the balance in this movie. And we've talked about this. I really like the balance in this movie of the humor and the serious moments. I think
Yeah.
sometimes in MCU films, you can get a little bit too much humor, right? Thor Love and Thunder was a lot of humor, not a lot of serious moments. And you have to be able to balance it out. There's this charm to having both that DC films, even though yesterday I was talking to you about how much I love Zack Snyder as a filmmaker. Um, that's very, very dark, and the humor kind of seems out of place.
Yeah.
Especially like in Batman v Superman, where he goes, "Is she with you? I thought she was with you." You know, it's like that was so out of place for that moment. Um, but in an MCU film, that's kind of their bread and butter. It's this. You've got these serious tones, but like these overtones of kind of comedy. And I think they do an expert job in this film of that. Obviously, part two, volume two, is funnier than this movie. It's like
because I feel like
hands down funnier than this movie.
Yeah. And I feel like you explore so much of the other characters in volume two. Because I feel like this one, like, really we're just trying to get our feet wet and like get us familiar with these characters and like introduce us to like, parts of their personality and the purpose they play in the story. But really, outside of Star Lord, we don't, I mean, and Gamora's I would say Gamora's kind of second to Star-Lord, but those two, like, we really don't get a whole lot of backstory or background information, just little bits and pieces here, enough to make us understand who these characters are and where they're coming from. But I feel like there's in volume two, they take these surrounding characters and like, okay, let's flesh all these out, right?
Here's my question for you. Would this movie have worked as well if Star-Lord was not human?
My initial answer, I may change my mind the more I think about this. My initial answer is no, because I feel like you always need a human character as your main character, or human like qualities of your main character to latch onto in sci-fi movies, because we as the audience need someone to identify with right off the bat. And we can infer things about Star-Lord, even though he was young when he got abducted. Like, he was born, like, spent his early years on Earth. Like, he had a human family and like an earthly family, so like we can understand that, right? Whereas like, but then like saying he was like raised as a Ravager, like we don't understand that part because we don't know what a Ravager is. We just think it's a bunch of pirates.
Other than they somehow really want to eat Terra, which is which I like that they call Earth Terra.
Yeah,
I like that. But they're like, the boys have never tried Terra before. It's like, I saved him from eating you. He's like, you've been throwing that in my face for the last 25 years that you just saved me from eating, which is really funny. I asked that because I knew that was going to be your response. When we need a kind of lens to look through each film with, but especially in stories that are otherworldly, we need a character to kind of ground it in a way, but to be our entry point into the universe.
Right.
I feel like
I usually call it like our access point as the audience. Like, how are we accessing the story? Whose point of view is it told through? And shocking, I'm going to use Star Wars as an example here, but Luke Skywalker, like, yeah, he's a kid from the deserts of Tatooine, and we don't understand what that is, but Luke looks like your everyman, like young American teenager, like wanting to go out and explore the world, but not, still being kind of wet behind the ears and bright, starry eyed, and not
Right.
under
Yeah.
and not understanding really how the world
Is he wet
outside of.
behind the ears because he's a moisture farmer?
Stop. Oh my god.
Well, I mean, look, it's Tatooine and it's a desert planet. It was filmed in Tunisia. I mean, him being wet behind the ears is not exactly something that is possible unless he's a moisture farmer or Jabba the Hutt. But it wouldn't be water. It would just be like sweat, just ooze from Jabba the Hutt.
Sly
Um,
face sweat.
yeah, I mean, he's
Ah,
like a Loki a slug.
dang it. I lost my train
Um,
of thought. Where is it going with
well, you were
this?
just saying that he's
Yeah,
green. Yeah,
he's green. He doesn't know much about the universe, just as we as the audience don't know much about this Star Wars universe in A New Hope. And so we learn things right along with him. And so it feels natural and organic, this progression of the story, but yet you're helping the audience understand the world around this character, right? And I think you get a very similar quality with Peter Quill, with Star-Lord in the Guardians movie. Like, he doesn't understand what he's found at the beginning. He doesn't understand what an Infinity Stone means,
right. He
or
just knows
why
it as an
it's
orb.
yeah. He's just looking to get paid.
Yeah, get that
Um,
bag.
yeah.
Get that orb
So
bag. The Borg. The bag orb. The Borg. Star Trek. Patrick Stewart. Professor X. It is all connected. That's. I just. I just created a conspiracy theory. You're welcome, TikTok.
you don't
Um.
even have TikTok.
Yeah, that's why I had to do it here.
I don't even think you watch the TikToks I send you.
I watched some of them. I
It's okay.
honestly,
I look at
the thing
some
I
of the memes you
appreciate
send me on Instagram.
the thing I appreciate most is that you think of me, even though I don't have a TikTok, and you send them anyway. Like that actually, like it really means a lot. Like I really like. I appreciate that you think of me. Um, but yeah, I don't watch all of them, but I watch some of them.
It's okay. I don't look at all
I
your
watched
memes
one of them.
that you send me on Instagram.
Yeah, but you have an Instagram. That's different. That's
Yeah, but
different.
I don't use Instagram to like just like endlessly consume memes.
That's but that's what I do.
Yes,
And
and
yeah,
I
no, the amount of
appreciate that you.
Shrek memes. There's an iconic Shrek meme, and you know what? Jake's gonna put it on the screen for you now. With Steve Harvey. Uh, he's gonna put it on the
This is
screen.
cursed. This is
It
cursed.
is so good, but it's so epic.
God.
And so I sent it to Jake, and we are talking about it yesterday, and you like started crying. You're laughing so hard. You're like, come on, man.
This whole
But
episode is just a meme.
yeah, well, hey, I'm all about them memes and stonks, and a meme stonk. Anyway, well, we've had a lot of fun here, but let's get back on track with Rosebud and Thorn. Jake, what are your Rosebud and Thorn for Guardians of the Galaxy?
So I have a few roses here. Excuse me as I consult my paper here.
Like a bouquet?
It, I got three roses. First rose is Chris Pratt. I
Okay.
think he's really. It's a great performance. I think he's really enjoyable as Star Lord. It's very. I think it's a different take on a superhero, and as someone who's not a Marvel or really even just like a superhero junkie, I really enjoyed the performance as something a little different from the genre. That it's something a little outside the genre. So I
Well,
really.
didn't James Gunn really like his audition too?
Oh, he loved it. He loved it so much that I read that he Chris Pratt was a little heavier. He's playing
Andy Dwyer,
yeah, Andy, thank you.
Unit.
On Parks and Rec. And so they
Burt
wanted.
Macklin, FBI. That's who he was.
they wanted someone more chiseled to play Star Lord, and James Gunn liked Chris Pratt's audition so much that he was like, I don't even care if he doesn't lose the weight. I'm gonna CGI on a six pack. He's that good. Um, but Chris Pratt did end up losing the weight. He was supposed to lose 50 pounds and he ended up losing 60 pounds. And contrary to what Parks and Rec says, it's not just because he stopped drinking beer.
That
It was a
is
little
so
harder than that.
iconic that he said that though. He's literally said, "They're like, Andy, how'd you lose all the weight? I just stopped drinking beer." They're like, "Did you work out, exercise?" I just stopped drinking beer. It's like, you lost 60 pounds because you stopped drinking beer.
Yeah.
Like, that is hilarious. That was like
It's a
an
very
expert
Andy
way.
thing. It's
Yeah,
a very
that
Andy
was like an
thing.
expert way to handle that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he has a great performance for
So
sure.
that's one of my roses. The other rose, when I told my mom we were doing this, she was like, "Well, one of your roses has to be the soundtrack," and it is. That soundtrack is like pure like '80s nostalgia, which is a genre I really enjoy. And it
I
just
do too.
it's so on par for the tone of the movie. It heightens everything, and it's interesting because usually soundtrack and scoring is the last thing you do, or one of the last things you do. You add that to the cut and make the music fit around
Sure.
the edit. But they did this in reverse for a lot of scenes. They pre-scored and they would play like some of the tracks that they wanted on the soundtrack during the scenes. Like obviously that's not, they laid the music in later, but like they would cut, they would act and cut and edit this around the songs in mind. I mean, the whole opening sequence, um, it's actually, it was for, they had cut it around um, Hooked on a Feeling by Blue Swede. Um,
Hmm.
they ended up, Come and Get Your Love. Is what they ended up using. But like they had like shot that around like that song. And so like had things planned out around the song. Like
Interesting.
so it was a really interesting for a movie that has music as such an integral part of it. I think that's a really it was a really neat detail that like they were that intentional about it, and I think it really pays off. So the soundtrack is one of my roses, and then the comedy. This is just a genuinely funny movie, and I think it, like we've talked about, it seeks to be a comedy first and a superhero action movie second, and that's not typical of superhero movies or even the MCU. Um, and I think this really works being a comedy first. And I think I think that draws a lot of people in. And as someone who's not an MCU fan, like this drew me in because it was that funny. I enjoyed it and I wanted to rewatch it because it's funny, not because
Yeah.
it's a superhero movie. So those are my roses. My bud is going to be Lee Pace. There are times I enjoy his performances, Ronan. There are scenes that he does a good job, but on the whole, I think it's a little too big.
Okay.
It's a little too
Like, he really needs to understand the pace of the film.
I just think it there are times it lacks subtlety. And I just like
Yeah, he is kind of over the top.
I think the default is a big outburst or a big emotion or a big reaction. And like sometimes it works. Like I think the climax is one of the few times that I enjoy his big performance when he's just like, "What? You're just mortal," as they're like holding the Infinity Stone
Yeah.
and not like completely dead and like fried like a scrambled egg. But he takes that level of intensity to other moments in the film when I don't feel like it needs it.
Mhm.
So that's gonna be my bud, and then my thorn is really nitpicky, and honestly, it might be just a me problem. When you rewatched it, did like the aspect ratio change for like some sequences?
Okay. Yeah. So actually, what that is that's IMAX enhanced. I know what you're talking about too, but they went ahead and instead of doing Ultra HD kind of stuff, they plussed it by doing this IMAX enhanced version of it. So the aspect ratio increases to cover the full screen, but
Mhm.
then it goes back to the 246.1, whatever the
The IMAX resolution.
yeah, whatever the, so you got bars on the
Yeah,
top and bottom. And so that's why certain sequences have that.
yeah.
But I know exactly what you're talking about because I hated it too.
It bugged me, and I kept being like, well, maybe it's just because I'm watching it on this TV, and like honestly, like when you watch it on a big screen, like maybe that
I'm
doesn't
sure it's,
happen.
yeah, it's negligible. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not going to really hold that against the film. It's just this viewing experience. The thing that I was like, I didn't like this part of it. It was like it kept switching and it bugged me. But that's me being a film nerd and nitpicky. So those are my roses, bud, and thorn. Ben, what you got?
Well, I'll actually go in reverse because I will say that thorn, and that is my same thorn. Um, and it reminded me, like, Christopher Nolan loves to use IMAX cameras,
Mm-hmm.
but and I specifically remember in The Dark Knight, it was big because some of it was shot. I think the exterior shots were shot on IMAX, and like that was a big thing that they were able to bring IMAX cameras into this and shoot sequences in IMAX. But when you switch that ratio, that takes you out.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's especially big on, especially noticeable on a smaller screen
Yeah.
because it's, you're not enveloped in it, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not huge. Like Jake and I last night went and saw Lawrence of Arabia in IMAX at the State Museum, and that's huge.
Yeah.
You know, so if they were to change the aspect ratio, I don't think it would have been as noticeable.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's the small screen, it really does kind of take you out of it. And I started to kind of look for it and
Yeah.
notice it. And anytime that happens and it takes you out of a movie, that's why I struggle with. There are some directors that like to change their aspect ratio. Like Wes Anderson will do stuff like that, which
Mm-hmm.
is very stylistic, and I appreciate it for that. But I don't really like it in general.
Yeah.
So I'd agree that's my thorn too. My rose, I would say, is the score soundtrack. I think the score is really good too. Tyler
Yeah.
Bates did the score. And yeah, da 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 da. You know, it's like I da 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 da. Like
Yeah.
that kind of. I really liked what he did with the score, and I thought it really plussed the film.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I will say that I think the direction here, I think James Gunn does a spectacular job. He, especially Dave Bautista, like I really like Dave Bautista in this,
Yeah.
and I think Drax is freaking hilarious in this. But Dave Bautista at this time was not an actor.
No, he's well, I mean, he's a professional wrestler, which you could say is partially being an actor because none of
Yeah,
it's real.
yeah. So spoiler alert. None of professional
Uh,
wrestling
I
is real.
remember when my brother and I we had my brother some more so than me. I was just kind of a copycat when we were younger, but we had like a WWE phase, and then I remember playing the video game one time, and my dad just like watching us and be like, "You guys know, like it's not real, like it's scripted and fake," and I was just like, "What do you mean?"
Well, and yeah, it is definitely fake.
Yeah,
But he was able to take, you couldn't really tell that he couldn't act.
no, I think it was really kind of a nuanced performance in that it was one note the whole time, and it was this like straight up like deadpan honest not understanding sarcasm, like
Yeah.
the way they like built that role kind of around his strengths. I felt like I really enjoyed, and I think that was a very smart move by James Gunn.
So yeah, so I'd say James Gunn and just in general, right? His directing, his writing, I think this was very well written.
Mhm.
Um,
Actually, if
and
I can add a bit of trivia, so
yes,
there's a co-writer, Nicole Perlman.
yes.
She was a co-writer on this, and the only reason I want to stop and point this out is that she is the first woman to be given a screenwriting credit on an MCU movie.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
so this is the
I
first
don't
time.
think she did the second one.
Yeah, I'd have to look
And
into
I
that one.
think that's why it might be a little bit funnier. Like if you look at Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 and the Suicide Squad, James Gunn's two other superhero movies, they're a lot funnier.
Mm-hmm.
Just great. But I liked the subtlety of this one, where it's
Yeah.
funny, but there are also serious moments. I talked about that earlier.
I feel like it
Um,
in that aspect, it was kind of like they were trying to be like, okay, we're gonna try something a little new with a superhero movie, and I think perhaps some of the more subtle parts of the humor, I enjoyed them, but I think almost can be viewed maybe as a little bit of a hesitation on,
mm,
like be like, okay, like we need some more superhero parts of this. You know what I mean? Like
okay.
we've
Yeah, I
had a
see
lot
what
of
you're saying.
comedy. Like let's get a little more superhero-y. Um, yeah,
Yeah. And and I guess it's a little bit of a cop out just saying James Gunn as a director because I do like all the performances in it.
yeah,
But I think James Gunn really brings, especially with Chris Pratt, who, if you've ever seen any of the stuff with Parks and Rec, like the outtakes, he's so funny,
he is.
but enable or this ability for him to kind of pull in more of some dramatic elements
Yeah,
to it, I really liked.
yeah.
So those are, I don't really have a bud necessarily other than more Yondu. I'd like to see more Yondu, and we will see more Yondu.
That's why I really
Um,
like the second one.
yeah, Yondu's such a freaking clown. But yeah, so it's a great movie. I think kind of final thoughts. You didn't hear that voice crack, by the way, but the final thoughts for this, at least for me, is this a very interesting MCU movie? I think it's one of the best.
Hmm.
I genuinely do, and I've changed my opinion on that after seeing it again. I'm like, this introduces the characters, but it's a fun,
Yeah.
exciting adventure. I really like all the performances. I like some of the things it sets up. Knowing part two, like volume two,
Hmm.
and even volume three, kind of the story behind volume three, I see where the seeds have been planted. And I always
Hmm.
appreciate that in a script when you've
Yeah.
kind of planted seeds for further exploration in different films. Like it's hard because I wouldn't say this is if you want to watch the MCU movies, maybe watch this one first, like this is a really good film. I wouldn't say that
Hmm.
because it is kind of cosmic and
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily representative of the rest of the MCU. Um, but I really liked it.
Yeah,
I
and
really
I
did.
think, building off that, I think for me, like I enjoy these movies because it's a little different than the rest of the MCU. And like, okay, I can appreciate what the MCU has done for cinema
Mm-hmm.
in the last,
Okay, Scorsese.
15, 20 years. They're not my cup of tea. And
Right.
that's really just kind of superheroes in
If
general.
John Wayne was a superhero,
Yeah. John Wayne is
then
a superhero.
you'd be like, oh, freaking right, let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like even just like growing up, like I was never a superhero kid. I remember one time at a birthday party, opening it was like a Superman or a Batman toy that someone had got me, and being like, I thought this was gonna be Star Wars Legos, but cool, thanks.
Dang, that
Um,
is an L. If you
yeah,
open up you want Star Wars Legos. Star Wars Legos are S tier. They're
yes,
goaded.
they may
They're
be the
fantastic.
one toy that I've not permitted my mom to get rid of since I moved out. I'd be like,
I
maybe we should keep these.
I got rid of mine in probably like end of middle school.
Yeah.
I had some episode one stuff that I got rid of. Uh
Some of that stuff's
I'm
worth
still
money now.
Yeah, I know. I'm still kind of mad. It's like the people that got rid of their Kenner toys.
Yeah.
How stupid do you have to be? I know somebody that still has all of them. Like, if you die, can I just have that?
Yeah.
Just write me in and just say Ben gets all the Star Wars stuff. Everything else, don't care. Money, don't care. Just give me the Kenner toys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
But
there's a guy I know that has the Boba Fett with the rocket that shoots out of his
oh,
back that they
really?
discontinued and recalled,
Yeah.
and because they're like, send it back in and we'll get you a new one. And he goes, I'm not sending it in. Like I'm keeping it, and he still has it today, which is really
That's incredible. But yeah, this is just these this is a fun movie. If you're not an MCU fan like me, I would encourage you to give this a try. If you like anything about the
Yeah.
80s, I would encourage you to give this a try. Because this fair has a very like 80s flavor nostalgia to it that I really enjoy. But before we go, we haven't done who each other who what characters we are. There, I can speak words. Um,
Okay.
so
Go ahead.
you want me to go?
I do.
Don't let this go to your head, promise.
I promise nothing. But yeah, yeah. Okay.
And it's because of that joke is why I'm going to say this. I think you're Star Lord, because I think like the way like his default reaction is to make like a joke. That's kind of you.
That is kind of me.
I was watching.
I know when to turn it off.
Yeah, and I think you see that with Star Lord too. Like he knows like when to be serious, but like if there's a moment that it, like we could have a joke here, he's gonna say a joke. And it
And
was just I was just watching this and I was like I was listening to like his lines and his humor and I'm like, this is something that Ben really enjoys.
I kind of feel a little exposed too, because even with the Addams Family, a musical that I had just done, that I just finished a couple weeks ago, there were so many times during, like when we were doing rehearsals and stuff, I was like, we could add a joke here. Like we could. I wanted to rewrite a little bit of it and add a subplot about. There's a line in the show where the guy says, you know, my surprise bag is overflowing. The guy that patted me down at the airport slipped me his number. And so I wanted to do a running gag for the rest of it, where when he said slipped me his number, he pulls out his phone because he slipped me his number, which implies that he put it in his phone. And then later on, when there's a question, he talks to Gomez and he goes, "So, 15 acres in Central Park, how'd you swing this?" And I wanted him to rewrite it to this guy, or it's like Dave told me it was 15 acres in Central Park. How'd you swing this? And I wanted him to go, Gomez to go, "Who's Dave?" And then he goes, "Guy from the airport." And then like you have another line where he gets like a text that goes, you know, and then his wife goes, "Who is it?" He goes, "Dave just wanted something." And I just kind of wanted to like, obviously, it would have been really funny.
You would have thought it would have been really funny.
I thought the Shrek line I rewrote that we actually did was really funny.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. But the hero always comes back. Romeo, Ulysses, Shrek. That's the line that we rewrote. Shrek, not Shrunk.
We already showed the
Oh,
meme once. I can't bring it up again.
yes, you can do it. Do it.
This is cursed.
There we go. You
This
see
is
that,
cursed.
folks? That is cursed. And he did it again. And with that, this has been another episode of the
Wait a
Cinephile.
minute. Who am I?
Forget.
No.
No, I think of all the people, you're probably a mixture of Yondu and Groot. You've got the heart of Groot. You've got the heart of a tree. But you're also kind of, I don't know, you just kind of remind me of like Yondu is just kind of a clown.
Yeah.
And you can be really goofy too. Um, like for instance, when he goes and he's like, I want to put all these on the dashboard of my ship.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I feel like Jake would say that about like Civil War stuff. Like, oh, I want all of these. Like we're walking through a shop. He's like, I want all, like, why would you want those? Sure. I just want to put them on the dash of my car. I want to have them all facing out. So it's like I'm always going into battle.
Fix bayonets.
Yeah.
Okay, there was something this rewatch that it dawned on me about Yondu, and it made me like Yondu even more.
Mm-hmm.
Is like, as much as I like Michael Rooker's performance, like there's something like Bruce Springsteen-esque about Yondu and like his like the voice and everything.
Yeah.
How iconic would it have been if it was actually a Bruce Springsteen cameo? Like that would have been incredible. No, I'm
That
not.
would have been incredible.
I'm not trying to take anything away from Michael Rooker. I think it's great, and I think he does even better in the second movie.
Well,
But
and he's always in James Gunn projects.
yeah,
Yeah, like
is he
he's
in Suicide Squad? Dang,
yeah,
I might need to watch Suicide Squad then.
yeah, he's in the Suicide Squad. I think he gets killed pretty early on. That movie's freaking wild. They have like
Called the
a
Suicide Squad. What'd you
yeah,
expect? A walk in the
uh
park with
Idris Elba's
Dave?
character, Idris Idris Elba's character and John Cena's character have a kill off to show how they can kill in the, I guess, like the funniest ways. They're like trying to one up each other.
What is this?
Um,
John Wick movie?
yes, but really funny. It's like it's really funny. Um, I think at one time there's a guy like in a bathtub and there's a toaster next to it, and like John Cena shoots the toaster and it falls in and kills the guy.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
hilarious. But anyway, well, it has been an adventure this week, but we want to hear from you. Have you seen Guardians of the Galaxy? What is your ranking in the MCU tier? Do you like it? Is it tier 1? Is it tier 2? Let us know all your thoughts in the comments down below. And make sure to follow us on social media. Follow us on the Cinephile on Instagram. Follow Jake and myself. We'll be back next week with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 in our lead up to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 that drops in May. For Jake Biller, I'm Ben Sparrow. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you back here next week. And cut.